Hi friends, it's Marilyn from tarotclarity.com, and today's video is going to be in honor of Pamela Colman Smith. Now, I'm not showing Pamela Colman Smith tarot decks per se. I will reference it, but it is her birthday and she's contributed a lot to modern day tarot reading. And even if you aren't interested in her deck, she piqued, she was significant in piquing the interest of many people to just learn about tarot in general, whether you veered toward her deck or an older deck. Right? So I wanted to give a nod to her. And, this morning, it's funny how the universe works. I was thinking I would like to do a video, in honor of her, but I didn't know quite what to do because I didn't really want to do another Pamela Colman Smith video because I've done a few. In this thread or this feed really isn't about, modern day tarot decks, as a rule. So I wasn't sure how to honor her. And out of the blue, a girlfriend from college, and we're talking almost 50 years ago, contacts me, and she knows that we chat regularly. We talk, text each other every day, but never about tarot, although she knows I do tarot. And so she asked me what the dog in the Fool tarot card meant. And I thought, perfect topic to discuss Pamela Colman Smith, particularly since her card has a dog for the Fool. And I thought I would pull a variety of tarot decks throughout history and discuss the appearance of the dog. So having that in mind, I'm going to flip the camera and I'm going to share with you some decks that do and don't have a dog. And I'm not sharing all my decks because we'll be here for the next 5 years. But I probably have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I probably have about almost 24 decks on the table. And at the end, if you stay tuned long enough, I'm going to discuss that last video that I had created where I do a predictive reading on the Eagles versus the Chiefs. So I won't sign off before I address that. So give me a second and we'll switch the camera. Okay, so before I show them all, I'm just individually, I'm just showing you the number of decks that I have laid out here. So bear in mind that everything I've pulled, I've got to put back. So it's an ambitious video. Okay, so in honor of Pamela Colman Smith, I am starting with her 1909 and 1910 decks, the Roses and Lily back and the Crackle back. This particular one was put out by Conrad Steen, I think his name is, or Stein. I apologize. I should have checked before I started. But I've done other videos, and if you were to go through my feed, you'll find the 2 videos, that where I discuss these 2 decks. And whether you're looking at the 1909 or the 1910, the color is slightly different, but the card is essentially the same. And we have what modern day folks, especially in the States, probably the deck that most people here would have first recognized or become familiar with the tarot. Now, I'm an exception. I'm old, and I watched Dark Shadows in the 60s, and the first deck I ever encountered was the Besançon 1JJ Swiss tarot deck, and that's the one that I sort of fixated on. So I was kind of an exception to the rule in the United States of people who first became aware of tarot. I did not become aware of tarot through Pamela Colman Smith. I became aware of tarot through the 1JJ, 1JJ Swiss tarot deck because it was put on television on Dark Shadows, and it was the first time on American television that a tarot deck had ever been seen. Also, if you recall Nightmare Alley from the 40s with Tyrone Power, I believe that was probably the first time in American movies that the tarot deck was seen, and I think that was a Pamela Colman Smith deck. but I wasn't alive in the 40s, and I didn't become aware of that movie until I was an adult. Anyway, so here we have a youth depicted in very nice clothing. And he looks like an aristocratic and entitled young man. He's got a rose. He's got a satchel. The sun is shining on him. He is on the verge of a precipice, and there is a dog who looks playful and not menacing. And this is the Fool card that most of us, particularly in the United States in modern day, English-speaking countries perhaps, maybe I can say that, became familiar with the Fool, with the playful dog, and how it looks. I want to pull another deck that I don't have out here. So if there's a jump, that's why. Okay, so now I'm putting these two cards that we're familiar with, the style of the Fool, aside, and I'm going to try to more or less sequentially reference the Fool in tarot. Now, I'm not going to, start a pissing contest about which deck came first, because none of us were there and I don't know. But certainly the Cariel Visconti Madrone Tarot deck is among the first. And here we see someone who looks quite unlike the privileged youth of this card. This guy is in tatters, and we see no dog. There are references that he's a fool because he's got like feathers on his head, so he maybe has a flighty kind of brain. And we do see a dog, although this is the Lover card, we do see a dog referenced in the Lover card, right? Which in art of a certain period of time, and the dog was a sign of fidelity, and so it wouldn't have been unusual to see a dog in portraits of betrothals, right? And we see them in a variety. We see the dog referenced in a variety of artwork, whether it's tarot or not, where the reference is fidelity. And so that might be why we see a reference, or we see people referencing the Fool with the loyal companion dog. I'm also showing the Magician card in this early deck to show that in Italy there is a tradition of an individual, maybe a trickster, a sleight of hand artist in the employ of children. So maybe he was employed to, do, shows for the benefit of children. Now, in very early on, we also have the Solabrusca. And here we have, again, as we do in the earlier card that I showed, an individual, his clothing is kind of hastily done. He's making music. There's a tradition now of music. There is what appear to be, I don't know if those are bells. I'm not sure that they're bells, but they might be. But in any case, he's got a musical instrument and a bird, right? So there is here a suggestion that music is involved with this individual. Now, with the Rosenwald, I believe that the Fool was missing, but the Rosenwald and the Budapest are as early as, manufactured or for the mass public decks might be available, right? The early 1500s. And again, in the Italian decks, we do see a sleight of hand trickster for the magician. And then when we get to the Budapest, again, we have a reference to somebody who makes noise, right? So he has bells clearly. They jingle jangle, He's a wanderer and he's got bells, maybe to let people know that he's around. I'm not sure. And then for the magician, we do again have the tradition of a sleight of hand artist, but this time it doesn't look like the audience is children, it's adults. And we see dice and other things. Okay, so now we progress and we have the Charles the sixth tarot deck. I think that's what it's how it's referenced. But it's become known as by a couple other names, but I think the Charles the Sixth is the most common name, and that's how it was marketed by Marco Benedetti. Anyway, we again see a scantily and obscenely dressed fool with bells in the company of children who might be mocking him. But he seems to be performing for their benefit. So not really exactly sure what's going on here, but there you have it. And there does not appear to be any dog. Now we get to the Metelli, and I'm showing two versions of the Metelli, one by one by Lo Scarabeo, I apologize. And the other, who did this one? I think this one was Giordano Berti's Metelli, whereby we have the one making music or noise is the one that's referenced as the magician, and he's got a dog. Right? So that's very interesting. So we have someone in the tradition of music making, which we've seen happening in the Fool of the early decks, but now it's the magician, or what we consider the magician now, and there is the appearance of a dog. And again, this individual is entertaining children, almost like a Pied Piper, right? And the dog kind of, sort of looks playful. But the card that's recognized as the excuse card is someone who is again scantily clad, although this guy is too, but this guy's more hurriedly dressed, missing shoes and one sock. And he's got a balloon, and yes, that is a balloon. I looked it up a while ago thinking, how could that be a balloon? Because rubber wasn't made then, but they made balloons out of animal intestines. And then this is some kind of, I'm guessing, some kind of wind, wind thing. Maybe it would have been playful. The wind would have made them flap. Maybe it made a noise. I don't know. But again, you see that he has the reference to a flighty brain because there's feathers in his hair, his hat. So interestingly, and then when is the Metelli? I think 1600. I think it's 1600 in Bologna. So in 1600 Bologna, which is about 100 years in, of the tarot in Italy, we don't seem to have a noisemaker for the Fool. We seem to have, but we still seem to have someone who's disheveled and who has playful accoutrements, and there is no dog. There is something in the bottom corner here, but I don't know what that is. It could just be a tuft of grass. But then in the Metelli, we see the noisemaker, and we see the children, and we see a dog, which is very interesting. And for the record, the Metelli is my favorite deck. Okay, now we have a little bit later, I believe this is the Fina della Torre, also a Bolognese deck, prior to 1755, I think. So it would have been around 1725. And we have, again, a fool in the tradition of a noisemaker, feathers in his hair, and we see no dog. And then in the, what is this one? Etruria, which is in a Minchiati deck. Now we have children, and this deck is 1725, so it's kind of around the same period of time as the Fina della Torre, right? Different region of Italy. We have the balloons again, or maybe, since they're on a stick, maybe they're not balloons here. Maybe they're clackers where they make noise. But we still see this thing that might be affected by the wind. That's what it looks like to me. And there are children. They appear to be children. And he has feathers in his hair. So it seems, that the fool is somebody who maybe didn't partake in adult activities or, kind of whimsical appeal to children. And again, the magician card in Italy having a tradition of being a trickster or a sleight of hand individual. So it was nothing new when the French got hold of that, the magician. Okay, again, now this is a very similar deck, but this is the, the Fine della Carte Fine al Mondo, which is a little bit later because it has the four Moors in place of the female pope, the empress, the emperor, and the pope. So it's very essentially similar to the deck I just showed you a card or two ago, right? The Fina della Torre, but with the exception of getting rid of those four cards and replacing them with the four Moors. But again, by 1755, I think, we still have the feathers in the hair or the hat and the tradition of music and no dog. Okay, now we get to, occultist traditions. Now we have Atea, and I'm not sure if I have it in the correct order, but of course he was referencing, or his exposure to tarot would have been the Tarot of Marseille, since it was French, right? Not particularly the Italian decks. In fact, the occultists really pretty much, didn't even consider that the Italians knew anything about tarot, and they assumed that the TDM, the Tarot of Marseille, was the quintessential original true tarot. And so from that understanding and his experience, we have a fool with the satchel on a stick and some type of creature. And maybe, I'm not sure, how he depicted that. If it's supposed to be feline or canine or something else. Then we have the Vernano, which now is an Italian deck from, what's the year, 1863 maybe? I think it was 1863. And this particular one is published by Giordano Berti. Let me just check on the year. Yeah, 1830. So although it's Italian, it has already been exposed to the French decks. And it changed things up a little bit. We include a butterfly, a playful butterfly, and a tulip or some type of flower here, which maybe could be where Pamela Colman Smith got her rose idea from. I don't know. But I do know that the Vernano is the first time that a butterfly ever appeared in the Fool card of a tarot deck. And here he's not as, scandalously dressed, although he's kind of got a strange outfit on. Okay, I think this one, what is this one? Oh my goodness. Hold on, let me go check and find out which one this is. Oh, this is still the Vernano, excuse me. It's got the same back as the Vernano, so it's the Vernano. But again, it adheres to the tradition of, somebody working at a table. But notice that he no longer appears to be a trickster. But by now, in the Italian tradition, and we see it in the Sopraffino also, that he seems to be a cobbler, because it looks like now he's an artisan with tools of his trade. And his trade here appears to be a shoemaker. So there seems to be a shift from being an entertainer for children to being an artisan. Okay, now we have Oswald Worth. And we clearly, like Atea, we have a feline kind of looking creature, but definitely now it looks more feline. And now it's attacking him. So it's like, you don't belong here, get the hay out of town. And, it could explain why his clothes have been pulled down. Because, maybe the animal pulled the clothes down. And I'm just noticing, I meant to pull out the Noble and I didn't. So let me go get the Noble, because that would be the first TDM that these esoteric card makers would have been referencing. So I apologize for that. Let me go grab the Noble. So I most sincerely apologize for not having the Noble and the Vieuville in order. I meant to pull them and then I realized I didn't. So these guys were sort of around the same period of time as the Metelli, right? So here in Italy, the Metelli, where we have the noise, where we have this guy with the toys and the children. Oh no, this isn't the Metelli. I'm really screwing up. This is the Etruria. Okay, let me get the Metelli. All right, here's the Metelli. I do apologize. I don't know what's wrong with me today. Okay, here's the Metelli. So here we have the Metelli. Hold on. It's definitely a disadvantage in having a camera in front of myself and not being able to clearly see what I'm doing. And I'm blind on a good day. So here's the Metelli, which would have been around the same period of time, maybe a little later than what was happening with the Noble and the Vieuville. And we notice, that by 1650, when the Noble became what is recognized as like the first TDM out of France, we see, the tradition of a scantily, and here again, similarly to the Charles VI deck, a obscenely, dressed individual being attacked by this creature, who may or may not be a dog or a cat, right? And this is how it was in Italy. Oh, no, that was the dog. That was the magician. Ay, ay, ay. Oh my God, I can't win for losing. I can't win for trying. Well, anyway, let me get the right card. Oh, thank you for waiting and being so patient with me, because I definitely screwed up. So here we have the Metelli. He's still, not perfectly dressed, but there's still no dog. And this is what's happening in Italy, right? And so we have the Tarot of Marseille, who perhaps incorporated the dog and misunderstood the dog from the magician, or the card that we recognize as the magician in this particular deck. I mean, when it migrated to another country, it's possible things kind of got lost in translation, and then suddenly the vagabond turned into something else. They took the dog from another card and incorporated it more. Maybe, I don't know. And then by the time of the Vieuville, which is roughly around the same period of time as the Noble, we still have the creature. And here, you know, the main area looks yellow. So maybe it's like a little cat. So maybe it was a feline here. Okay, so then by the time we get to Oswald Wirth, skip, you know, 150 years or whatever, we do still have, you know, the vagabond in the tradition of the noble with an attacking, fierce-looking feline. And then this is the épinal, which is still French. And the épinal, what year is this? Let me see if I can find the box. I don't see the box on the table, but it's a bit later. As is the Dodi. And now we see in the Italian decks, now we see, you know, perhaps the influence of the French decks, you know, going into the Italian decks, because now, you know, the Italians are making the cards just like anybody else, and they have to appeal to a broader audience. And perhaps by now the French cards became the more fashionable look, and so they've incorporated an animal in their fool, which is now the dog. And then we skip another 100 years or whatever, 150, and we have the Nap Hall tarot deck. We have a wanderer with a dog who isn't as menacing as that crocodile or alligator or whatever it is. And then we have the Aquarian tarot from 1970 or early 70s, and there is no animal at all. But we do have a bit of a refined youth who looks like they're wearing nice clothes. And there is a feather in both of their caps. I failed to mention that with the Pamela Colman Smith. There is a feather in both of their caps, which could suggest a flightiness of mind. And as in the Pamela Colman Smith, the Aquarian tarot has a flower, a rose. Okay, now we have El Gran Tarot, El Gran Tarot Esoterico from, I don't know, 1980 maybe, 1981, early 80s. And we have, you know, Kabbalistic thing going on, and which was happening in these other decks, some of the other French decks. And then we have the Roland Nordic. Right. And then we have the Garth Knight Tarot deck, which again has the alligator from the Nap Hall reference. And Nap Hall has a dog, and the Garth Knight has what looks, well, it could be a cat, could be a dog, who knows. But we have a harlequin kind of figure. So, you know, no matter which deck you're looking at, you know, the appearance of the canine or feline is open to interpretation. You know, if you go with the earliest symbols of fidelity in medieval Renaissance paintings, you know, definitely the reference could be fidelity. But it takes on a different connotation when it's attacking the individual. So it's like, you don't belong in this neighborhood, get out. You know, it's kind of like that kind of message. And there we have it. So this is my ode to Miss Pamela Colman Smith. Thank you for your tarot deck, and, you know, thank you for having been alive. And she was an interesting person, and if you know, want to read anything about her life, there are interesting books out there, and you can hit me up if you want to know one or two of them. I have a couple. And oh yes, I want to conclude. Let me flip the camera. I want to conclude with my prediction that the Eagles would win. Now, in my heart, when I saw the cards of the last spread, in my heart, I knew, I hated to say it, but I really kind of definitely picked up on the fact that the Chiefs were going to win because there was a baton. If we think of the Chiefs as warriors, right? You know, there was a baton in the deck, and there was the emperor who was the chief warrior, right? And he had with him the symbol of an eagle, but that was only one symbol that referenced the eagles, you know. And the other card in the spread was the Tower, which was an upset, which makes sense because the Eagles were, not that they were dominating, but they were ahead most of the game, and they looked favored. And then at the last hour, we won't even go there, there was an upset, and they ultimately lost the game. And the victor were the Chiefs. So kudos to Andy Reid and his team for having won the game, the Super Bowl. And we put up a good fight, and they were two teams that were pretty well matched. I mean, it wasn't like a huge, whether the Eagles had won or not, there wasn't a huge spread in points, you know, so they seem to have been very well matched teams. So anyway, friends, I hope you enjoyed this little, you know, tribute to Pamela Colman Smith and the Fool, and the appearance of the dog or canine or whatever it is. Until next time, friends, peace and stay well.